Hello everybody, welcome to Totally Tabled. My name is Shaggy, and today I'm so excited to run down my top 100 board games of all time. Slay the Spire the board game is a faithful recreation of the popular roguelike deck building video game. Apart from the tactical joy of physically handling your cards, the tabletop version adds a cooperative mode for up to 4 players that elevates the experience beyond its digital counterpart. The clever, streamlined card play of Jaipur makes it stand out amongst the glut of two-player only games. Timing is everything as you go back and forth, trading goods with a central market, trying to collect and sell the largest sets you can, all with the help of camels, of course. Love Letter is a classic deduction card game that launched the microgame subgenre, and it's still one of the best. You win by knocking every other player out of the round through card play or by holding the highest numbered card when the deck runs out. Dozens of versions now exist with subtle changes, Love Letter Batman being the least sensible thematically, but one of my favorites. Despite not being a fan of flip and write games, I adore Cartographer's Heroes because the theme is so cool. You play a map maker charting out a fantasy land, but you get to physically draw the map. Best of all, the tile-laying gameplay here is compelling, making it more than just a fun art project. If you like spatial puzzles, then Rove is the perfect solo-only pocket microgame. You start with 6 modules on the table, and you spend limited action points to move them to form specific configurations, but each module moves in a different way. You must be efficient to win, but when you discover the perfect solution, you feel like a genius. Also, the robot is insanely cute. In Space Base, players race to 40 points by rolling dice to activate a growing tableau of ship cards with special abilities. There's a surprising number of different strategies to explore, but ultimately you're gambling on a few numbers, which leads to many exciting stand-up-and-cheer moments. 1960, The Making of the President is about the American presidential election between JFK and Nixon. 2 players compete for electoral college votes across all 50 states. When you play a card, you'll either resolve a powerful event or use action points to influence states or gain support on important issues like civil rights. The 2-player only Seven Wonders Duel redesigns the classic closed card drafting from the original Seven Wonders. Instead, players take turns drafting from a central market of overlapping face-up and face-down cards. At the end, the most points wins, but you can win early with either a military or science victory, which keeps the game thrilling throughout. Ghost Stories is a brutal cooperative tower defense game where you take the role of warrior monks defending a village from nightmarish spirits. You move around a 3x3 grid, either activating the special action of your tile or attacking ghosts by spending resources and rolling dice. The theme comes to life with the most stunning art in all of board gaming. In Dominant Species, you play as birds, reptiles, insects, or mammals prior to the Ice Age. You want your species to multiply and migrate to be the most numerous, but you'll also need to adapt to changing environmental conditions to have the best survivability and claim dominance over the region. The worker placement and area control gameplay is unforgiving, as you would expect for a game about survival of the fittest. Distilled is a game about crafting spirits, everything from gin and whiskey to aquavit and soju. You purchase ingredients, bottles, and barrels, and then distill your spirits using a satisfying push-your-luck mechanism. Much of the game can be played simultaneously, which keeps things running at a great pace. In the Voyages of Marco Polo, you roll 5 personal dice and use them as workers to take actions. You mostly gain resources for fulfilling contracts and journeying across the map. But what distinguishes Marco Polo from most other Euros is each player starts with a truly game-breaking special ability. It shouldn't work, but somehow it all comes together beautifully. 2 players take the role of pilot and co-pilot trying to land a plane together in Sky Team. Each player rolls dice in secret. They then take turns assigning those dice to the engines, wings, and brakes, often trying to collectively reach specific numbers, all without speaking. Scenarios add challenging twists and turns to the gameplay, and frequent crashes. Neuroshima Hex 3rd Edition is an abstract game that feels like a war game. Each player selects an apocalyptic, asymmetrical faction, and then takes turns playing out tiles. When someone plays a battle token, all the units attack in initiative order, resulting in total carnage. Marvel Champions is a popular cooperative living card game with so many expansions that your favorite Marvel superhero is almost certainly a playable character. You fight off villains using familiar card play that has been tweaked with brilliant thematic touches, like being able to switch between your superhero and alter ego personas. Darwin's Journey is a heavy worker placement game about Charles Darwin's time on the Galapagos Islands. In this game, your workers can study to be able to perform different types of actions or get more powerful at a specific action. You use them to explore islands, discover new species, and take those species to the museum, hopefully contributing to the development of the theory of evolution. Antiquity is a brutal city building and tile laying game, where one wrong move can torpedo your society. You grow your city by placing polyomino tiles onto a grid, which represents buildings with different abilities. Every round, your city generates pollution, destroying the land around you, forcing you to explore the hex map and expand your civilization. In Carnegie, players develop a business by recruiting and managing their workforce. Each round, one of the players picks an action out of 4 options, which all the players get to resolve. But running a successful company and getting rich won't be enough. To win, you also need to contribute your wealth to various philanthropic causes. The Bloody Inn's macabre theme, where players murder, rob, and bury guests at a hotel, is elevated by the game's wonderful sense of dark humor and its evocative and unsettling artwork. You must spin cards in order to play cards, but certain cards are proficient at certain actions, which means you get to keep them. Just be careful that the cops don't catch you with unburied bodies lying around. Inish is a quirky area majority game about being elected king of a Celtic island. You're trying to achieve one of 3 victory conditions. Have your clan figures in 6 different territories, or in territories with 6 sanctuaries, or control territories with 6 opposing clans. And you must announce that you meet a victory condition and then hold it throughout the round, which makes winning the game an intense struggle. Dice Throne is a dueling game best with 2 players that uses a Yahtzee-style dice rolling mechanism for combat. Each player controls a character with a unique deck of cards and custom dice that can activate special abilities. It seems simple, but there's more complexity here than meets the eye. In Shakespeare, players take the role of theater managers putting on a play. You must hire actors, but also make their costumes and even put together the sets. The characters you use one round to take actions must rest the following round, so if you overwork your craftsmen, you risk missing out on the best fabrics and set dressings. Agra is an overlooked, complex worker placement game all about resource conversion. In fact, the entire map is one giant flowchart where you can refine raw resources into ever more advanced and luxurious goods. It sounds like a mess, but everything fits together due to a host of innovative mechanisms that I haven't seen in other games. Architects of the West Kingdom is a worker placement game that works best at 4 or 5 players. You start with 20 workers, and as you place them on action spaces, they stay there, and the more workers you have on a space, the better the action becomes. But if you get too greedy, someone might take an action to arrest them all, forcing you to bail them out of jail to get them back into your supply. In the solo-only Halls of Hegra, you play the commander of a group of Norwegian volunteers fighting an overwhelming German force in the early days of World War II. At its heart, it's a tower defense survival game that also features bag building, action selection with different workers, a morale system, and dice-based combat. It can feel almost unwinnable as the game intensifies with each turn, climaxing in an all-out German assault that is harrowing and memorable. It's not the first game to combine deck building and a race across a map, but the quest for El Dorado is the best. Your cards allow you to traverse the different terrains, or they provide money to buy better cards. And you can customize your map to adjust the length and difficulty of the game, which makes it the perfect family game for any experience level. Rollet is hands down the best 4-player dexterity game ever made. It's a riff on Crossfire, except you propel the metal balls using nothing but gravity by rolling them down a small ramp on a swivel. Matches get intense as you frantically grab for more ammo while trying to aim your next roll. Codenames is my kind of party game, which is to say it's far more thinky than most. You lay out a 5x5 grid of random word cards and form two teams. The spy masters for each team provide clues, trying to get their teammates to pick certain words and not others. My favorite version of Codenames is Codenames Duet, a cooperative two-player version which lets each player play as spy master and guesser at the same time. It's a Wonderful World is my favorite of the pure closed card drafting games. Players start with a hand of cards, then simultaneously pick one to keep past the rest, and keep doing that until they have a new hand. You can either construct a card or discard it for its resources. The rules are simple, but trying to build your resource engine is frustrating in the best possible way. Istanbul is a worker placement game of sorts, where you move around a 4x4 grid of action locations, either dropping off an assistant or picking one up and then taking an action. As you race around the board collecting money, resources, and rubies, you need to create an efficient route so you don't leave workers behind. Glass Road is a quick-playing resource management game where each round players secretly select 5 specialist cards from an identical set of 15. As you take turns, if you play a card nobody else played, you get to do both abilities on the card. Otherwise, you only get to activate one. To succeed, you need to predict what your opponents might play and try to stay flexible with your strategy. No easy task. If you prefer brutal player interaction in your resource management strategy games, then Barrage is for you. You'll be competing to build dams and powerhouses to produce the most hydroelectric energy. But you must be careful because someone could build a dam upstream from yours and redirect the water to their powerhouses. Marvel United X-Men is a simple, family-friendly cooperative game. On your turn, you play a card from your hero's unique deck and resolve all the action icons on it, as well as on the previously played card. This means players can set each other up for powerful turns, which creates this thematic sense of heroes working as a team. Spirit Island is a popular, heavy cooperative game where you play as spirits defending an island's inhabitants from colonizers, which is a refreshing twist on troubling board game norms. You must either wipe the colonizers out or instill enough fear in them to make them leave by using deep strategic card play. Coffee Roaster is a quirky, solo-only bag builder about making the perfect cup of coffee. You'll be pulling tokens out of a bag, manipulating them using abilities, roasting the beans to higher numbers, and putting them back into the bag. You keep doing that, trying to tune your bag, so at the end of the game, when you brew your cup of coffee, you pull out just the right tokens. There are so many subtle strategies and tricky decisions in Oranienburger Canal. This medium-weight tile and card laying game is a satisfying brain burner, which I prefer as a solo experience. I adore the puzzle of building routes, trying to activate the cards at the optimal time to get the resources you need. This is an underrated Rosenberg gem. Weather Machine is another heavy, brain-destroying Euro game from one of my favorite designers. You'll be moving one worker around to 4 different action locations, trying to fix a mad scientist rogue weather machine before it destroys the world. This game requires a lot of long-term planning, and the path to success is never obvious, but the payoff is worth it when you finally have that plan come together. Star Wars Outer Rim lets you live out the most interesting part of the Star Wars franchise, the seedy underbelly. I have so much fun flying around from planet to planet, picking up jobs and crew, earning money, upgrading my ship, and then engaging in ship-to-ship combat. It is a glorious adventure, especially when you add in the Unfinished Business expansion. Primal the Awakening is my favorite cooperative boss battler. You can fight many different monsters, either in one-off scenarios or through an epic campaign. Each hunter has a unique set of action cards and weapons, the card play is visceral and intense, and the monsters don't take turns, but rather react to your actions, which makes each battle feel dynamic and cinematic. These days, social deduction party games are a dime a dozen, but none of them are as fun as Deception, Murder in Hong Kong. One player must silently give clues to the identity of the murderer, who is posing as an investigator like the rest of the players. And it doesn't take long before everyone is yelling accusations at each other based on the flimsiest of evidence. It's hilarious. Innovation is a chaotic, one-of-a-kind civilization building card game. Players draw and play cards into 5 stacks based on colors. You can activate the special ability of the card on top of each stack, which might let you attack your opponent, or maybe improve your tableau by letting you splay cards in your stacks, revealing icons on the cards below. This truly is the pinnacle of the take that genre. Heat Pedal to the Metal is the best pure racing game because its simple AI system allows you to play with an optimal 6 cars on the track regardless of player count. It even works brilliantly for solo play. The racing uses a card cycling mechanism where you try to add and remove heat cards at just the right time in order to cut a corner or sneak into a slipstream position, gaining these tiny advantages which are critical to pulling off that photo finish. Keyflower combines 2 mechanisms that I've never seen put together before: worker placement and auctions. Each turn, you either place a worker onto a tile to take its action, or next to a tile to bid for it. At the end of the round, you add all tiles you won into your personal village. It might look tranquil, but this is one of the most cutthroat and ruthless Euro games of all time. In On Mars, players act as private companies creating self-sustaining colonies on Mars. You'll either take actions on the planet's surface or on an orbiting space station, shuttling from one to the other between rounds. The actions available to you depend on where you are, and player interaction is higher than most complex strategy games, a hallmark of Vital Lacerda's designs. Nippon is a dense economic game with a focus on area majority. You invest in different industries and produce goods to serve either local or foreign markets in Japan. On your turn, you select a worker pawn and take the action of that space, but ideally you'd like to take workers of the same color, because you pay wages for each different color rather than each pawn. It might be an abstract game, but Tash-Kalar Arena of Legends is so full of life and energy, it doesn't feel like one. Players place out tokens onto a shared grid, trying to create patterns on cards, which summon powerful creatures into the arena. For me, this is an underappreciated gem and the greatest abstract of all time. Rajas of the Ganges is a worker placement game where dice are used as resources for building markets and temples into your personal estate. Throughout the game, you'll gain 2 things: fame, which moves on a track from left to right, and money, which moves from right to left. And you win if you are the first person to have those 2 markers cross. That means you can focus on fame or money or dabble in both, making for many different paths to victory. The United States government has collapsed and players are fighting for control of a new state in 51st State Ultimate Edition. Turns are super quick in this card game. You just take one simple action, either to play a card, or gain some resources, or convert those resources into points. And the Ultimate Edition has a new solo automa that I highly recommend. In Zhongguo, the First Empire, players are responsible for unifying the new Chinese Empire in 221 BC. Over 5 rounds, you must place palaces, install governors, and help construct the Great Wall. On your turn, you'll either play a card in order to take an action, or tuck a card under your player board to provide a bonus when taking future actions. This might look like a typical dry Euro, but the puzzle here is dynamic and engaging. Invention's Evolution of Ideas is a heavy Euro game that explores human history by focusing on the development and propagation of technology through the ages. The central mechanism here is an action chaining system, where you can gain chaining tokens and then use them to take multiple actions in a row. By the end of the game, you might take 6 or 7 actions on a single turn, which feels so rewarding. In the co-op adventure card game Earthborn Rangers, the world has been transformed into a vast and vibrant wilderness. You'll create a character by constructing their deck of skills, equipment, and personality cards, and then use those cards to explore an open world that feels truly alive. You'll meet interesting people, make surprising discoveries, and slowly uncover the many mysteries of this futuristic world. Clank Catacombs is my favorite of the Clank series of games because it adds a sense of exploration and surprise. It has the same straightforward deck building gameplay, but in Catacombs, you draw map tiles as you delve deeper into the dungeon, never sure of what you'll find next. This adds even more tension as you search for valuable treasure. Cosmic Encounter is an older negotiation game that has inspired countless other games, and yet it still feels one of a kind. Each player gets an alien race with an insane game-breaking special ability. On each turn, you must negotiate with a random player, either attacking one of their planets or working out some kind of compromise. Take that cards with wild powers increase the chaos, making this feel like the ultimate gamer's party game. The game that invented deck building as a gameplay mechanism is still one of the best to ever do it. Dominion has over a dozen expansions and thousands of cards, but it's really just a simple, quick-playing card game that feels like a classic. Add in the Prosperity, Seaside, and Intrigue expansions, and you have a game with endless replayability. Vinhos is an economic game about the business of winemaking in Portugal. You'll be developing vineyards, hiring workers, harvesting and producing your wines, and then entering them into tasting competitions. All of this will increase the value and quality of your wines, which you can sell to local and foreign markets for money and victory points. For a complex strategy game, the theme really comes to life. Multi-use cards are one of my favorite mechanisms, and La Granja has the most multi-use cards in any game. Each one can be used in 4 different ways by physically tucking it under one of the 4 sides of your player board. This game also has great dice drafting, as well as area majority and contract fulfillment. It's got everything and the kitchen sink, and donkeys. If you're looking for a demanding, heavy strategy game, Madeira is the game for you. Players roll 3 dice and take turns using them to take actions based on the positioning of their workers across the map. Actions require resources and money, but if you don't have enough, you can always take pirate tokens instead. But at the end of the game, whoever has the most pirate tokens loses a bunch of points, which creates a tense standoff between the players. Ra is the greatest auction game of all time, and it really isn't that close. Players take turns drawing tiles out of a bag until someone declares an auction for the entire lot. Bidding is done using 3 sun tokens that have set values, so auction rounds are quick and exciting. When only one person remains, they engage in a push your luck final turn that always has the table chanting, "Ra, Ra, Ra!" At the heart of Trajan is a satisfying Mancala system. On your turn, you must pick up all pieces in a single bowl, and then redistribute them one by one in subsequent bowls, moving clockwise. The bowl in which you place the last piece will determine which action you take, and if the bowl contains the colors shown on the adjacent bonus tile, you get to resolve that as well. This central puzzle is so good, it more than makes up for Trajan's bland look and dry theme. Anachrony is a heavy worker placement game with an intriguing sci-fi setting where everyone is preparing for the end of the world. There's a high-stakes time travel loan system where you can obtain goods from the future, but failure to repay could result in devastating time paradoxes. You have 4 different types of workers, each that are better or worse at different actions. Some actions even require your workers to enter mechs, and if you have the minis, the workers slip right in. It's so gratifying. In underwater cities, the Earth is overpopulated, so it is up to you to establish cities under the ocean. You accomplish this engineering feat through card play and worker placement, where you ideally take an action the same color as one of your cards, so you can activate both. Much of the game involves drawing cards off the top of a massive deck and tactically playing them to gain resources to complete your aquatic civilization. Viticulture is a medium-weight worker placement game where you get to run your own winery. You must plant grapes, harvest them, age your wine in cellars, and then sell it for money and victory points. My favorite way to play is with the Tuscany expansion board, where actions are stretched over 4 seasons, which adds a delicious timing element to the worker placement. Of all the many iterations on the Pandemic series, Pandemic Iberia is my favorite. It plays similarly to the original Pandemic, with the same mechanisms for infections, outbreaks, and epidemics, just with a few simple twists which add a lot of strategic depth. If I could only own one pandemic game, this would be it. The abstract look of Ginkopolis belies just how colorful and special it really is. In this tile-laying city-building game, players use cards and tiles to expand a central city outwardly as well as building up, creating stacks of tiles. Ultimately, you're trying to have majorities in the various colored regions on the board. Battles for control often get super mean and really swingy. Concordia is an economic hand management game that uses a card rondelle mechanism. Once you use a card to take an action, it's spent and cannot be used again until you play a special card that lets you pick up all of your spent cards. Action cards allow you to move your colonists from Rome to surrounding cities, build buildings, buy and trade resources, and acquire new cards with even better actions. Sekigahara: The Unification of Japan is a two-player block wargame, one of the few wargames you'll see on this list. I love the bluffing in this one. To activate a block during a battle, you must have a matching card in your hand. So someone might have a scary-looking stack of blocks, but no way to use most of the units. This is easily one of the most accessible and enjoyable wargames I've ever played. Star Wars Rebellion is Star Wars in a box. There's no other way to describe it. One player takes the role of the Rebel Alliance, engaging in missions of subterfuge and sabotage, and the other player controls the Empire with its overwhelming military might. The Imperial player wins by finding and destroying the Rebels' hidden base. And yes, they can blow up planets with a Death Star. This is an epic, cinematic game of galactic hide-and-seek, and is my favorite game in this franchise. Dune Imperium combines worker placement and deck building by having the card you play determine where your worker can go on the board. So as you draft new cards into your deck, you have to pay attention to both its ability and where it lets you place workers. This combo works flawlessly, and if you're a Dune fan, you'll enjoy all the thematic touches. Lisboa is a complex hand management Euro game about the reconstruction of Lisboa after the Great Earthquake of 1755, which was soon followed by a tsunami and 3 days of fire. The thematic historical details in this game are remarkable. You'll gain influence and resources in order to obtain licenses and permits to reconstruct the city, but you do everything simply by playing a single card each turn. Arkham Horror the Card Game is a cooperative adventure campaign game set in a Lovecraftian world of monsters, cultists, and madness. This game utilizes cards so creatively. One scenario, you're exploring a house, flipping over cards for each room, and the next scenario, you're running down the cars of a moving train. You never know what's going to happen next, and that makes for an exciting adventure. The Crew Mission Deep Sea is a cooperative trick-taking game, which really plays like a deduction game. Players have tasks they must complete, like winning the first trick or not taking blue cards, and the group must figure out how to play the cards to achieve these tasks, using limited communication and standard trick-taking rules. When you have a group that can play this at a high level, then the Crew offers one of the best experiences in all of gaming. Grand Austria Hotel utilizes one of my favorite board game mechanisms, dice drafting. At the beginning of each round, you roll a handful of dice, with each number representing a different action. The more dice, the stronger the action, and you can use these actions to gain food and drink to satisfy customers in your cafe, to prepare hotel rooms for them to stay the night, and to gain money, which is always super tight. In the Gallerist, you get to discover new artists, commission their work, entice important people into your gallery so you can sell their art and make a pretty penny. And all of this is achieved through a very friendly worker placement system, where if you go to a location that contains another player, they don't block you. Instead, you bump them out and they get to take an extra action. If you're looking to dip your toe in heavy strategy gaming, this is a great place to start. In Ark Nova, you get to create your own zoo by building enclosures and filling them with cute animals from a giant deck of cards. You take actions by picking one of 5 cards that are in a row. The power of the card is equal to its place in that row, so the further to the right, the more powerful. But after resolving it, the card resets back to its weakest position at the beginning of the row. This action river system, along with its tableau and engine building, are borrowed from other games, but for me, Arc Nova surpasses its influences. Rare is a board game that is both wacky and smart, but the loop manages to nail both. Underneath its colorful illustrations and delightfully irreverent time travel theme is a cooperative deck building game with combo-rific card play. If you're clever, you can loop your cards, reactivating them, which can lead to my favorite thing in all of board gaming, the coveted Mega Turn, where you use abilities on top of abilities to pull off insane actions. A central cube tower is the perfect tactical cherry on top. Dexterity games are often sadly overlooked, but Clask deserves to be mentioned right alongside the best games in this hobby. Imagine air hockey, but improved in every way. Players control a magnetic pawn from underneath the table, trying to knock a ball into their opponent's goal. But you must be careful not to fall into your own goal, or have two little magnets connect to your pawn. Clask is the one game I think every family should own. Nemesis is unofficially Aliens the board game, and it absolutely nails that cinematic sci-fi survival horror atmosphere. You explore a derelict spaceship infested with hostile aliens, using card actions to complete specific goals. And as you sneak around and make noise, the terror builds, because you know any alien encounter could result in infection or instant death. If a board game could have jump scares, Nemesis is the one. Sleeping Gods has everything I want in an adventure game. An unfamiliar world to explore, entertaining stories that let me make decisions that have consequences, colorful characters who change and grow, and a fun combat system. In addition, Sleeping Gods is entirely open world, which is something almost no other board game has managed to pull off. I can set sail in any direction in this vast sandbox and discover quests, secrets, puzzles, treasures, dangerous monsters, and friendly companions. Capturing that feeling of freedom in a board game is truly special. Every horror movie fan needs to play Final Girl, a solo-only dice-driven survival game that lets you experience whatever horror trope you desire, from classic slasher films to stranger sci-fi and fantasy stuff. Every scenario box has a different location and villain, with unique rules and special abilities that nail the atmosphere. There's plenty of luck in rolling the dice to activate your action cards, but the cinematic story the game tells makes every bad roll as satisfying as the good ones. In Obsession, you are attempting to rehab your troubled family's reputation in mid-19th century England by hosting social activities on your estate. You need to host the right activities to impress the elites, and each activity requires you to manage your workforce as well as have the right guests available, which are cards in your hand. Getting everything to line up takes careful planning in this surprisingly crunchy game. Lost Ruins of Arnak really appeals to my love of exploration in games. You'll send out your small number of workers to discover new locations, defeat fantastical guardians, and collect resources and relics. You'll also do some light deck building with multi-use cards. I love how you can always figure out a way to accomplish more than you initially think you'll be able to. Keep in mind that the Leaders expansion elevates the base game to the point that I consider it essential. It might look like any other trading, farming strategy game, but At the Gates of Loyang doesn't feel like any other game, because your turns are so free-flowing. You have a long list of actions, and apart from one, you can do them as many times and in any order that you want. So you might buy and sell vegetables, trade with market stalls, use helper special abilities, plant and harvest fields, all with the ultimate goal of trying to fulfill short and long-term contracts for money. Frostpunk is the perfect video game adaptation because it takes the bleak setting and the fascinating survival city building from the video game and concentrates it into a handful of critical decisions each round. You can feel the chill in your spine knowing you're always one wrong move away from an icy death. Can you juggle your resource needs in order to keep the giant central furnace lit so your population can work without getting sick? Can you grow the city, create shelters, and produce food while managing the morale of your citizens? It all ties together flawlessly. Versen das Volk recreates the history of divided Germany after World War II. One player plays East Germany, the other West Germany. You'll draft and play cards, either activating an event or using action points to build up your infrastructure and economy. Your goal is to show off your superiority, which will in turn let you put out standard of living tokens that cause unrest on the other side. This is a fascinating political game that has completely replaced Twilight Struggle for me. Amsterdam is a re-implementation of Macau, with new art, some card balancing, and a few added gameplay elements. Whichever version you play, it's a brilliant medium-weight Euro game with one of the most clever mechanisms of all time, the win rows. Essentially, you get to pick a number of action cubes each round, but the more cubes you pick, the longer you have to wait before you can access those actions. This allows you to set up these massive super turns, which is so satisfying when you can pull it all off. Troya is a quirky, medium-weight Euro game about defending the famous French city over 4 centuries. Players use groups of 1 to 3 dice to take actions on the board in order to earn money and fame. You can use fame to manipulate your bad rolls, or you can pay other players money to use their good dice instead of your own. At the end, each player has a hidden scoring condition which everyone will score, adding an extra layer of intrigue to this special game. There's not much I can say about Gloomhaven that hasn't already been said. It's one of the most beloved cooperative games of all time. It combines traditional campaign-based dungeon crawl mechanisms, where your heroes level up and get better special abilities and weapons, but it does away with dice combat and replaces it with a brilliant card system, which requires careful tactical planning each turn. Every new scenario in the campaign feels like a new puzzle to solve, rather than just a dice-rolling luckfest. For me, that's an ideal combo. In Dungeon Pets, players take the role of pet store owners for adorable baby monsters. You'll have to meet the needs of your monster pets by acquiring appropriate cages, cleaning out those cages, feeding them, entertaining them, and controlling their anger and magical outbursts. This is all done with a worker placement system where you bid for turn order, and a clever card management mechanism that makes each pet feel alive. No other board game simulates what it feels like to own and care for a pet like Dungeon Pets. Galaxy Trucker is a real-time tile-laying game where you get to build a spaceship out of junk parts. The first half of the game, you must quickly draw and place tiles to form your ship, using parts like lasers, shields, rocket boosters, crew quarters, batteries, and storage. Then in the second half of the game, you journey into space and face an event deck full of danger, like asteroids and raiders, but also planets where you can collect goods to carry back home, assuming your ship has enough storage and can survive the trip. The joy of Galaxy Trucker is watching your poorly made ship slowly fall apart with each asteroid crash and laser blast. I've never laughed so hard at a board game. The Castles of Burgundy is a classic tile-laying game where you use dice to take actions. You draft tiles from numbered depots and then place tiles onto your duchy board, adjacent to previously placed tiles, completing different colored areas for points. I love puzzling out how to use my 2 dice most efficiently each turn, and filling up large regions and scoring big just feels so good. This War of Mine is the most profound board game I've ever played. The side of the box says, "In war, not everyone is a soldier," and that perfectly sums up what this game is about. You play as regular citizens caught in the middle of a war, trying to survive the physical and mental toll. As you scrounge bombed-out locations for food, ammo, and medicine, you'll encounter harrowing stories that often force you to make gut-wrenching decisions and live with the consequences. This War of Mine is an important game, which provides a meaningful experience, and that's what keeps me coming back again and again. Doomtown Reloaded is a complex and cinematic collectible card game, minus the collectible part, with my favorite theme, the Weird West. Think the Wild West, but with magic and advanced technology and horrific monsters. The gameplay doesn't feel like your typical CCG because there is such a strong spatial aspect. You play cards to grow your posse and outfit them with basic gear like horses and guns, or more extravagant items like flamethrowers, mechanical horses, and unholy curses. Combat comes in the form of shootouts, which are resolved by actually playing a hand of poker using the cards from your constructed deck, because every card doubles as a standard playing card. Each game of Doomtown feels like watching an episode of a great sci-fi western. Mage Knight appears to be a typical fantasy adventure game, but underneath the surface, this is actually a demanding, unforgiving efficiency puzzle that is still in a class all its own. Everything you do, from moving and exploring the land to fighting off orcs and sieging castles, is done through your hand of cards. And every card is upgradable using a specific type of mana. The possibilities seem endless for how to play out each hand, and when you unlock the perfect turn, squeezing out every last drop of potential from your cards, the feeling is euphoric. Mage Knight is the ultimate puzzle, and I consider that high praise. One of the most satisfying actions in all of gaming is Tetrising together all the weird shaped tiles in a feast for Odin. On your turn, you place a group of Viking workers onto one of dozens of different action spaces. You might collect resources, hunt and fish, raise livestock, craft wares, or even build ships to plunder riches from distant lands. All these rewards are represented by tiles of different colors and shapes, and every round you must puzzle out how to arrange everything on your board, following all the placement rules, hopefully surrounding bonus boxes to earn extra income. When playing solo, you use two different colors of workers and simply leave the previous workers on their spots, effectively blocking yourself from round to round, which is so genius it actually makes solo my preferred way to play. PAX Premier 2nd Edition is a tableau builder where players take the role of Afghan leaders in the 19th century. You will ally with one of the great superpowers of the region at the time, and you can shift and change your alliances throughout the game to further your own personal ambitions. On your turn, you will purchase cards from a central market, then play those cards to your small tableau, and then activate actions on those cards. Ultimately, you want your allied superpower to have dominance on the map, but at the same time, you want to be the most influential player with that superpower. PAX Premier feels unlike anything else. It's a subtle game of careful positioning and timing, coalition building and breaking, and intrigue and subterfuge. When I'm in the mood for something super crunchy that will break my brain, I turn to Kanban EV, my favorite heavy Euro game from one of my favorite designers, Vital Lacerda. The worker placement system is tight and confrontational. Timing is everything as you jockey for position in the different departments, which let you design, innovate, build, and test new car parts. But this game isn't really about cars. It's mostly about office politics, as you try to please your demanding boss, brag about your accomplishments during meetings, and outmaneuver annoying coworkers trying to sabotage your career. At its core, Great Western Trail is a deck-building game where each turn you move your cowboy pawn along a branching and expanding path of action locations. Your main goal is to create a valuable hand of cattle cards by the time you reach the end of the path, but you can only count different types of cows. Duplicates are worthless, so you'll need to tune your hand by discarding cards and drawing new ones, as well as craft your deck by purchasing higher quality cattle and permanently removing the cheaper repeats. You can also build new locations for access to more powerful actions, hire workers to make your actions more effective, and advance your train token down the track so you can sell your cattle for more money. Great Western Trail offers so many different paths to victory, and that is one of my favorite things in board gaming. Voidfall is a massive, complex Space 4X game that plays competitively, cooperatively, or solo, though I prefer it solo. Each round you start with a hand of focus cards, each with 3 actions, and on your turn you play a card and pick 2 of the 3 actions to resolve in any order. These actions let you build and deploy fleets to your shipyards, move those fleets and invade adjacent sectors in order to push back the evil Voidborn, place guilds on planets, and then use those guilds to produce resources, research and invent new technologies that give you incredible special abilities, and so much more. I'm a sucker for epic thinky puzzles, and Voidfall delivers an experience like no other game. outside of Mage Knight. Through the Ages, A New Story of Civilization is an epic civilization building game where you span the ages from antiquity all the way to modern times. You must balance food, science, and culture production, the strength of your military and your workforce, and the happiness of your citizens. Everything you'd expect from a Civ game is here, except for one thing, a map. You won't find a board in the middle of the table with plastic armies moving from hex to hex. Everything has been abstracted onto cards, which you draft from a long and constantly flowing river of cards, each one representing new technologies, wonders of the world, governmental systems, or influential leaders. Each mechanism is brilliantly tied to every other mechanism. Every decision is intense and profoundly important. Through the Ages is truly a work of genius. And my number one is Robinson Crusoe Adventures on the Cursed Island, with the Book of Adventures expansion. This is a brutal cooperative adventure survival game that is scenario based. With the Book of Adventures, you have dozens and dozens of scenarios to choose from, each so distinct from the others. It's as if you have multiple games in one box. And yet every scenario features the same brilliant push your luck action selection mechanism, where each character can take one safe action or two risky actions each round. You'll be faced with events which require choices with actual consequences that can trigger later in the game, creating evocative, emergent storytelling out of strategic gameplay. Robinson Crusoe is a timeless masterpiece, as gripping and brilliant as ever, and it is my favorite board game of all time. And there you have it. Those are my top 100 favorite board games of all time. Please let me know which of your favorites I missed by commenting below. And if you liked the video, please subscribe to the channel and check out all my other videos. Well, there you go. That's all for me. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.